The recording's on.
And if you would then share the screen.
Indeed. Okay, hold on. You want the agenda now? Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Oops. Share. Oh man. Give me 2 seconds here. You know, you hit the wrong button and it closes.
I hate when that happens.
Me too. And then I gotta move it over here so I can see the controls so I can then actually share it. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the February 15th meeting of the Milford Planning and Zoning Commission. If we could have the Pledge of Allegiance and the moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America
and
and
to the republic for which it stands,
One
nation,
under
under God, indivisible, with liberty
and
justice for
all.
All right, thank you. David, if you could bring up the agenda again, please.
Yes, sir. And
Thank you.
okay.
Meg, if you would please call the roll.
Miss Austin. Present. Mr. Castagnoli.
Here.
Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
Mr. Cater. He was earlier,
He was here.
He's probably muted.
maybe. We'll come back to him. Mr. Collegian.
He's there.
Present.
Mr. Mortimer.
Present.
Mr. Moore.
Present.
Mr. Sadi.
Present.
Mr. Zaharidis.
Here.
And Chairman Quish.
Present.
And for the record, Mr. Cater is here.
Thank you. So we have a full house.
Yes.
Okay, our first order of business is a public hearing closed by 3/22/22, 119 Hillside Avenue, Zone R5, petition of Christopher Miller for a special permit to repair a seawall on map 49, block 795, parcel 90, of which Christopher and Ty Nugent Miller are owners. The applicant has the floor.
Mr. Chair, I do not see the applicant. The applicant was informed multiple times by email. And as of yesterday, he said he was going to be here. But I don't see him or anyone representing him.
Give it 30 seconds and then.
Here we go.
Mr. Cater has informed me that his mic on his computer is not working. So if he wants to say anything, he's welcome to text me and I will speak for him and put it in quotes.
Okay.
Okay, the applicant has the floor.
The applicant, Adam, who just joined us, you're up. You're the first item on the agenda.
And you're muted.
And you're muted. Wave if you can hear us, Adam. Okay. Adam, you have the floor. I'm not sure you can hear us. Adam, can you hear us? Adam Verneau? He's
Do you
just-
have a cell number you can call?
No,
Good, no.
no, let me see, I can go into the file. Adam, can you hear us?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, I just joined in.
Yeah, you're up.
All right, wonderful. I'm here to present for a Christopher Miller, who is a customer of ours who's looking to repair an existing seawall.
Okay,
Yeah,
Adam,
go ahead.
excuse me for interrupting, but if you would just give your name and address for the record and then start again. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to turn up the volume here.
Okay, good.
First name is Adam, last name is Vernott, V as in Victor, ERNOTT. My address is 166 Wintetrog Hill Road. I'm located in North Stonington, Connecticut. I'm in here on behalf of the Christopher Miller residence, which is located at 119 Hillside Avenue in Milford, Connecticut.
Okay,
Great. So there we go. Yep, perfect.
so I'm showing your plan. Is there anything you'd like to tell the board?
Now, basically, it's a seawall that has failed. It's in need of repair. This is what we do for a living. We build seawalls and repair seawalls. And basically, we have to chip out and replace existing concrete, add new rebar, but keep everything in place, not encroaching towards the Long Island Sound, and keep within the property limits.
So Adam, when you are chipping away failing concrete, how do you protect the rest of the environment?
We use type 2 turbidity curtains that we own. They have flotation on top, about 4 foot of boom on it, they call, and has chain on the bottom. We anchor them around the site for when the tide comes up.
And so this is left in place for how long of a duration?
Till the
How long do
project
you
is
anticipate
complete.
this particular project?
This project should take around 2 to 3 weeks at the most.
And so daily, do you do a fine clean of the top of the collection?
Yes. If there's we take out the material as we chip it out, let's say.
Right. Is it just a bulk cleaning or do you do a fine clean, like a vacuum or a sweep, or just big chunks?
Just a bulk cleaning.
Okay. And that's standard practice in your industry.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any other information that you'd like to share with the board before we open to questions?
No, I've worked in Milford several times. We've been very successful at, repairing and taking care of other customers in the area. A lot of the sea walls have deteriorated over time over there. The concrete walls happen to be right up against the water and they take a lot of abuse. This is what we specialize in. If you'd like to take a look at any of our work and see who we are, you can find us at www.oceancountyconstruction.com. Give you a feel for who we are and what we do.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Adam, your plan mentions helical piles. Though you're not replacing any of those, correct? That's just, they're there and you're going to work around them?
The plan calls for helical piles. The engineer put that in just to put in as much as he could to get the permit. And if we wanted to decide to use them or not. We don't plan on particularly using them because we're just trying to resurface and reface the existing seawall itself. To put the helical piles in, it's a major take out the entire face of the wall and rebuild. So he wanted to see, put everything in he could. Customer can't afford it, unfortunately. But we're looking to repair the actual existing seawall and the patio on top.
So you're looking just to return it to its original state. You're not looking really to add anything unless you have to. Is that basically what you're saying?
Basically, yes. The footing of it is undermined. So the wall itself is undermined, so it is sinking and it's coming down and it's pulling the patio away from the actual house. The house foundation probably be between 12 to 15 feet from the house itself, and is now deteriorating and sinking. So we have to repair the toe of the wall for it to support.
So you have not applied for a building permit at this point. You're looking for, again, the special permit for the use close to the mean high tide. If in fact you are submitting helicals to the building department, then you'd put them in. Is that accurate?
It depends. After speaking with the engineer, he said it was up to you to decide whether or not it needed it as you open it up and take a look at it.
Okay, so the city engineer would weigh in on that. It's kind of not really our purview. We're looking here to give you and your customer the okay to continue on the process to get proper permitting and engineering to comply with the actual construction. Is that accurate, David?
Yeah, the applicant already has DEP approval, and that was granted in December.
That's for the work, or is that including the
That's for-
construction with helicals?
That's for the plans that I think they would ultimately submit to the building department. The whole project has to be approved by DEP first before they can get the building approval.
Gotcha. So building will determine whether helicals are required to underpin the failing wall.
Correct.
Okay.
And as you said, Mr. Chair, because this is within 25 feet of the mean high water line, that's what triggers this special permit and the public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Any other comments or questions from the board for Mr. Vernant? If not, then I would open this up. This is a public hearing. And David, if you could put the agenda back up so I can see the dates.
Sure. Let's see here.
Okay, so this is a public hearing to close by 3/22/22. We would open this up to public comment. If you would like to speak to the issue, please state your name and address for the board and keep your comments to about 3 minutes. So if there's anybody that would like to speak to the issue, now is your chance. You can do electronically. You can say that you'd like to speak or wave your hand in front of the camera, and David will acknowledge you and let you in.
Mr. Chair, we have two visitors, neither which are raising their hands. So unless either Sarah or Therese would like to speak, I think there's no one who is here to speak on this issue.
Okay, great. Then without objection, we will close the public hearing. And if there are no more questions for the applicant, I would hear a motion.
So I'll make a motion. That motion would be to approve petition of Christopher Miller for a special permit to repair a seawall on map 49, block 795, parcel 90, of which Christopher and Nathaniel Miller are the owners.
I'll give it a second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there questions or comments on the motion? Discussion. Seeing none, Meg, if you would please call the roll.
Sure. Miss Austin,
With a motion,
Mr. Castagnoli,
Yes,
okay, thanks. Mr. Hirsch,
With the motion.
Mr. Cater,
The motion,
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
We have his
Nice.
his voice. I was going to speak for his text.
Mr. Collegian,
With the motion.
Mr. Mortimer,
With the motion.
Mr. Moore,
with the motion.
Mr. Sadi,
With the motion,
Mr. Zaharidis,
With the motion.
and Chairman Quish.
I am also with the motion. Adam, thank you and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
And David, again, I'm sorry, I don't have a printer at my disposal. I need to see it. Okay. That is the end of the public hearing. Old business, none. Liaison reports. Mr. Sadi.
No meeting this month also, nothing in front of Scrog, so nothing to report.
Okay, subcommittee reports. We have started a dialogue with the selected vendor for the plan of conservation and development. And we do have a special meeting tonight, starting at 8 o'clock. It's not a public meeting, but the public can watch, or anybody can come and watch. And we will have, as part of this meeting, I believe we're going to look at what the state statute means in the staff report. And at that point, the whole board can sort of direct the regulation subcommittee on what they feel are the priorities for them to work on in terms of, being compliant with what the state's asking us to do. So that will be a little bit later. And next order of business is the approval of minutes. I will recuse, having not been at the last meeting. I will recuse from voting. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes of 2/1/2022?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, second,
Second.
without objection. Chairs, the minutes are approved. Chair's report is going continually as consideration of in-person meetings. Next meeting will be in person. If anyone feels like there's new science that says we should go back to Zoomers, then you can bring them up. Otherwise, we'll just address this at the next meeting as a continuation. All right, without objection, we will meet, obviously, the first meeting in March in person. Long time. How long has it been? I wonder. 2 years, year and a half?
Had to be since what, March of 2020.
Pretty darn close.
Mr. Chair,
to years.
Mr. Chair, before you finish this discussion, I know that you were not there at the last meeting, but the discussion became that every 2 weeks we have to provide a month out of notice for the meetings. And I don't think we came to a final review, but I think that the consensus of the board was that absent a change, we would be consistently back into live meetings.
Yes, that was my intention. Yeah, I agree. That was my intention without anyone bringing up a concern. And again, it is exactly accurate that a month out is our look ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so staff report. David, inform us of what the state has told us we should or shouldn't do.
So can you see this? Yeah, I've been tinkering around with the screen. Okay.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, good. So that means when I was trying to pull this up, it knocked the agenda off. I apologize.
Okay.
Okay. Well, basically, as you've all heard, the legislature was very busy last year with many tweaks and changes to the statutes. And many of those changes and tweaks are in what's called Public Act 2129, which is rather lengthy. Not as lengthy as Public Act 21, I think it's -2, which was 800 pages, which some things are also located in there. But we can walk through the summary that I put together. I've provided you all with background information. If you have any questions, obviously stop me. There are, various things in there. Some are very important, and I think the board should consider, taking action on. Other things are more minor in nature, and in some cases, we may or may not have to tweak our regulations based on your opinions. And in other cases, we have to change the regulations because our regulations won't be in compliance with the state statutes. So those are sort of the three areas. The state created new language for accessory dwelling units. And if you go through this, and I'm assuming that everyone has read this, I'm hoping, it goes into defining what an accessory apartment is. It goes into a whole bunch of information about accessory apartments. But if we scroll through this, this is actually the language that we think we now have in place by statute. And when we scroll down here, there's the little summary that was put together. And what it does is you can have now by statute, unless Milford opts out, you can have an accessory apartment in a single family dwelling. And they tell you the process. It doesn't require a public hearing or a special permit, special exception. Basically, they make it sound, and this would involve having some discussions probably with the city attorney and some of our professional organizations. The way it's written, it's not clear if the board actually has to take an action on each application or if it's done administratively. But among other things that's in here, there is a size limit, and that limit, you must be able to allow a unit of up to 1,000 square feet or 30% of the size of the primary structure. The accessory apartment can be located in your main structure. It could be in the basement. It could be in the attic, whatever the building code will allow. It can also be in an accessory structure. So the key thing, though, if it's in an accessory structure, the board can come up with regulations in terms of setbacks. So right now, say if someone wanted to come in and build one of these, we don't have any regulation. We just have we have our garage. We want to convert our garage. Well, the garage, our setbacks for a garage are 4 feet and 5 feet off a property line. The legislation allows the board to say, hey, if you want to have an accessory structure in a separate building, in an accessory apartment, the board could say it's got to meet the same setback requirements or greater. I mean, you can set them to whatever you want. From a property line. So, things to think about. You can dictate whether or not they can be used as short-term rentals or not. Most people would not, most municipalities probably are going to do this, are going to prohibit them being used as short-term rentals. And the key thing is with the properties, the owner has to live there. So if someone is applying for an ADU, they have to live either in the ADU or in the house, but they can't add the unit to a single family house and then walk away and then rent it out as a two family house, renting out each of the units. So the action needed, unless Milford opts out, is because of the additional dwelling unit requires compliance with the statute and to render our existing regulations for accessory apartments null and void, it's recommended to replace our accessory apartment language. Our accessory apartment language is contradictory with the state and will become null and void come the January 31st, 2023. So we have accessory apartments. We limit the size. We have all sorts of things in there that the statute says we can't have anymore. So it may make sense to adopt just the statute, and then where the statute allows us to customize it, we should look at doing that. And as an example, our regulations limit the size and placement of the main dwelling, and that's in conflict with the statute. So we would have to change section 3.1.1.7.5. We need to create the recommendations for staff. So we need to create setbacks for standalone units that aren't located in the house. ADUs can only be approved either by site plan or administratively within 65 days. Currently our current accessory apartments are done administratively. Again, we can prohibit them from being used as short-term rentals. We need a new regulation for that. We'd have to change, paragraph, all of these. I don't know in what detail you want me to go through. If you want me to go through every line of the report I wrote for you.
No, I think you're doing a good overview, and please, I would encourage the board to, pipe up if you have a question about a specific thing. I mean, please just interrupt. I think you're okay with that, David. Is that correct?
Okay.
Yep. Just if you have an idea or a thought that if he's going too fast and you want to get more detail on something, please just ask.
So guy, I have a quick question. So this states that the state regulations are going to override whatever we have in place now. Is that what it's saying?
That is correct. What we have will become null and void unless it meets the requirements that the state has put in place.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And keep in mind, all of our zoning regulations and what we have and what we do in them flows from the enabling legislation from the state. All of our regulations are creatures of state statute.
Mr. Chairman, could I jump in, please?
Please do.
Just to clarify, because right now we have the term accessory apartment in our zoning regulations. Those accessory apartments are not restricted by zone. They can go in any house that essentially satisfies the criteria that's currently in our regulations. That doesn't mean to say that you can't continue having, call it what you will, an in-law apartment, an in-home accessory dwelling, however you want to call it. You just can't be calling it an accessory apartment because that would become in conflict with the state statute. So I think that's the clarification that wants to be made, is that you're not necessarily getting rid of the unit that you currently have in your regulations now. You're allowed though to.
Yes, but it's also just like it's less restrictive now, right? It used to be that you have to have grandma living there or something and no kitchen. Now you can add the kitchen and get somebody that's not a relative.
I guess that's what I'm saying, but these state statutes will allow you to, by virtue of, that you can have it as a freestanding standalone accessory structure.
Right.
You can now say that, okay, it doesn't make sense to allow it in an R5 zone. Or you can restrict which zones these are going into. So I think that's the distinction.
But Joe, I don't think I agree with that analysis. I think that it's saying you're not allowed, if there's an existing single family structure, that you can have an accessory apartment up to a third of the size of it.
And what let me just tell you what the statute says. An accessory apartment by statute means, so this is what it means: a separate dwelling unit that is located on the same lot as a principal dwelling unit of greater square footage, B, has cooking facilities, and C, complies with or is otherwise exempt from any applicable building code, fire code, health, and safety regulations. What that means is you could call some other dwelling unit on the same property anything you want. It's an accessory apartment under the statute.
And then with size limits.
And again, now, because it's an accessory apartment by statute, so our current in-law units, whatever you want to call them, accessory apartments, are now accessory apartments by statute. By this definition, the statute will now spell out how big they can be. In this case, up to 1,000 square feet or 30% of the building area, where ours are limited to 800. As Joe said, it can be located in the building. It might be in a separate building. But the statute,
you can't do it by zone. You can't do it like in an R5.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say that. But
we don't have the power to limit it by zone.
We can look into it, but I don't see that in this. But we can look into that.
I'm sorry, Joe, is that what you were saying? Is that we do have the authority to limit it to particular zones?
Yes, Dave, I think that's what the regulation, the statute is saying in here somewhere.
Yeah, I know it definitely gives us the ability to
With setbacks, but if
Locate,
you
yeah.
do it inside the
locate
unit.
placement, yeah. We can regulate them as short-term rentals.
And again, that's kind of vague. What's short term?
Yeah,
Like 30
well-
seconds or 30 days? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they're talking about the classic Airbnb short-term rental. I think that's what their intent is.
Yeah,
We
not
would,
defined.
yeah, we would have to look at that question as to whether or not you can limit it to a zone or not. I don't know. I mean, I don't remember that language jumping out,
But we are allowed to condition it on the existing setbacks, but not stricter.
right. So you can set a maximum floor area for an accessory apartment of not less than 30%. Here, this is a statute. These are the things you can do with it. It shall be required portable. The accessory apartments to be attached or located from the proposed, set a maximum floor area for 1,000 square feet or whichever is less, which is regularly allowed floor. Require setbacks, lot size, building frontage less than or equal to the lot which principal dwelling is on. Require lot coverage greater than or equal to those for the principal dwelling. Provide height, landscaping, architectural design standards that do not exceed any standards that are already applied to single-family dwellings. Be prohibited from requiring a passageway between such accessory apartments, such principal dwelling and exterior dwelling. Fees in lieu of parking. Familiar. Minimum.
Excuse me, David. So it's not saying anything. It's saying it doesn't have to have a separate entrance. It could be wholly contained in the main living area.
Yeah, you can have a separate entrance, or you don't have to have a separate
Or
entrance. Right. So like for our instance, our regulations currently, you're not supposed to have a separate entrance. They're saying here, I think you set maximum. I think you can have a separate entrance here. Yeah, you're prohibited from requiring, say, a passageway, say, between the accessory structure and the.
and B says an exterior door is not required also. Okay.
Yeah, except by building code. So these are all of the lists of things that you can regulate. Renewals, interpret, enforced, the ability to limit the accessory apartments, short-term rentals. That's what, yeah, short-term rentals or vacation stays. As of right application for review process, municipal shall not condition the approval of accessory apartments. Require installation of sprinklers. Yeah, so far, there's nothing here that says that you can limit its zone. If you have a single family home, you have a single family home that can take advantage of this.
Well, I think it does say you can do something with particular zones, but if there's an existing zone with a single family house on it, you can't deny that accessory unit on that particular property. So if there's a single family house in a mixed use zone or something, I don't know.
I
But I
don't know.
think-
I mean, I'm not seeing that, but yeah, it's.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, we can go into the weeds later. Let's get at the
Yeah.
higher level look and keep going.
Yeah. So,
Unless anyone
Mr.
has
Quish, if I
other
can just
questions.
have a question. Have I been recognized? I can't tell.
Yes, please. Just.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
So, on page 1 of the document, one of the things that's intriguing, and I think we need to just address this, not tonight, but there's a definition of affordable accessory apartment, which is binding on recorded deeds or certain covenants and restrictions, maybe 8 years, 10 years. That's one thing I'd like to get some answers on. That's on page 1, subparagraph 2 of the accessory dwelling units. And I think that as everybody in the board has asked, if we can get a summary, and I'm sure somebody's done it, as to what we can do and what we can't do.
okay.
So this is a definition. I don't think this gives us I don't think this gives us any authority to mandate it. It just says that somebody can do it.
So either if Milford does not want to allow accessory apartments, or I suppose if you don't want to have accessory apartments, you can opt out from this.
Accessory apartments by these definitions.
I think by these definitions, So if you want to have accessory apartments by our current definitions, then we would have to opt out of this, assuming,
So we opt out by 2/3 majority, and so does the alders?
I believe that's how it is.
Okay.
Then the only question I would have, which I'd have to find out from you, from council, would be, if you opt out of this, can you have accessory apartments at all? Because if you create accessory apartments that are different from this, it, wouldn't, well, I guess if you're opting out, you're opting out.
Yeah, so our existing would maybe maintain.
Right. Perhaps, yeah. But my understanding is that this legislation would apply to any property that is zoned, that has single-family residential in it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So let's see here. Let's scroll down here. Accessory apartment. Okay. My mouse is faster than the screen turning. Multifamily housing. Okay, so among some of the things in the legislation, it creates or it strengthens language that's already there for multifamily housing, and it gets into the weeds with things related to application fees and things of that nature, that there's nothing in our zoning regulations, in terms of fair fees that, we have to do at this time. There are some municipalities that have restricted by zone the amount of certain kinds of housing, multifamily housing. So they changed the law that says, basically you can't do that. It doesn't affect us. We don't do that. Minimum size requirements. The Public Act 20 prohibits municipalities from establishing minimum unit sizes that are larger than the minimum unit size established by the building code. So we may need to do that. And we actually do have to do that because we have minimum sizes of units throughout our zones, which turn out to be, perhaps too small. A stronger obligation to zone enable housing opportunities, see below. Because there is a municipal housing plan, municipalities are required to have a new, what's called municipal housing plan. That whole planning process and the adoption of that particular plan is being done separately through the Council of Governments. They have a consultant who's doing it for Milford and other towns that are part of the Council of Governments. It's being coordinated locally through our community development office. So they're in the process of working on the housing plan.
So David, just as a point of information,
Sure.
What is our board's place or responsibility in that? Is it just to read it and approve it once it's done, or do we have input, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has input. Anybody from the board can provide information through the public hearing process with that plan. And I would have to get you an update. I think there was actually a public hearing last week on it through the Community Development Office. What this board would need to do is, once that plan is in effect or is approved, and I don't think this board is the one that does it, but when the plan is in existence, we should be using it. We should have a mention of it. There should be something incorporating what it found in the POCD in our housing section.
So what input have we had? Is it just our representative described that has been informed or, yeah, I mean, can we all get informed on public hearings? I think that
Yeah.
if this is our collective response to needing a, you know, a plan to combat the way 830G has affected Milford, I think we should have some input. I mean, our city is a little bit different than every other city, and I feel like we're getting kind of, I'm sorry for digressing, but I think we're missing an opportunity if we're not having a voice in that room.
Okay. What I can do is I can get information from our fair housing officer, Sheila Dravis, and I can provide that to you as
Thank
to
you.
what the next steps are in the process and how you can participate.
We all should.
Yeah.
Or the whole board should.
Mr. Quish is, as you might recall, because you served on as a liaison, we're made aware of it, the members that represent our different towns and cities. However, the material that goes out to the city officials. It doesn't necessarily come back to us. So although I was somewhat aware of this plan going forward, I was never aware of any public hearing that I would have been able to let the board know about. That usually goes right out to the public officials. I don't have a list of who they send it to.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So I guess I would ask then, again, I'm sorry to digress with what we're doing here and make it longer, but if you would please inform the entire board of any public hearing or input that we have, because I think that every city has a different way of looking at affordable housing, and every city has different ways that 830G has either been effective in doing a good thing or being effective in doing a bad thing. And I think Milford is one of the towns where it has not been a good thing. And so I think if we're going to come around to have a plan that keeps us away from allowing 10 unit or 20 unit developments in single family neighborhoods, we should be able to participate in the structure of that. That's all I'm asking for.
And I will get an update from you from Sheila Dravis
Thank you.
and get that to you. Okay. So out of that particular section of the statutes, we would have to remove and change our minimum unit sizes in all of these sections of our regulations, because in all of the sections of the regulations, we have minimum unit sizes that would not be compliant.
And we can't do it with one change. We have to do it in 20 changes. Is that correct?
Yeah, because each one of these numbers represents a different section of the book.
So we have to change it all. Jeez.
Yeah. So, yeah, certain zones have, minimum unit size of, and I'll just throw this out as an example, 700 square feet for a 2-bedroom, and, and now, that we can't do that. It's got to meet, the statutes. Okay, so outdoor dining. This is the new outdoor dining legislation. You may recall that outdoor dining had changed first through the executive orders that allowed outdoor dining, and then changes to the executive orders that allowed outdoor dining, and then which then has become the codification on the legislature's part of outdoor dining, because everything that was done was under executive order. So starting in April of this year, they have these new regulations for outdoor dining. The thing that's interesting with these is you could also recall that because of the executive orders, and because people seem to like what was going on with outdoor dining, the board itself created new outdoor dining regulations. So we would just have to look at that and just see if there's any discrepancies. My reading of this, and again, these things can all be clarified, is that under the executive order and then under the legislation, you can have food and beverage services on public sidewalks, which we already allow in our regulations. That was even before the executive order. Pedestrian pathways abutting areas permitted for principal uses. amended from time to time. I believe it also allows the use in the parking areas. And then there are standards in here. It says, well, we can go through. I mean, if we went through this, line by line, but basically, unless it's called out as an area in here that they can use, the board then would have discretion for the areas that aren't being called out in here. So, there are provisions in here, for instance, if a restaurant was abutting someone else's property and they had extra space or a lot, they couldn't just go use it. They would need permission of the board to do that. They could still use the parking areas as they do now. And there's other little tweaks that we would have to go in and sort of compare now what we have in our regulations with what the state is having. And I think you might be able to get, if you choose, slightly more control of the site through the legislation.
Thank you.
And in a nutshell, if people want to have outdoor dining, they expect a 10-day turnaround. They still have, well, actually, this really won't apply because you already have regulations in effect that allow stuff to happen. And then again, it goes into, there's a lot of detail here, but basically, again, outdoor dining allowed. There are things that we can look at to see how we can, tweak it. Yeah, so the action needed items. Okay. So I know folks had mentioned, well, gee, what about recreational cannabis? We don't have to do anything because the Board of Aldermen voted to prohibit the sale of it. So the medical cannabis is still in place. Those regulations we have are fine, but there'll be no sale. There'll be no land use type of selling recreational cannabis in Milford. Then more into the weeds, there are changes to the deadlines for expirations for special permits and special exceptions. So we would probably need to tweak those items in our regulations because they're out of sync now with the statutes. Traffic and parking. They allow municipalities to ask to measure traffic impacts opposed by developments by what they call estimates of miles traveled or vehicle trips expected. So we could ask for that. It may not really affect us because already in our regulations, we can just ask for a full traffic study. So if we can ask for, the whole library, is asking for 1 or 2 books, adequate. I mean, that's your call, obviously. Now the other thing, let's see, traffic mitigation. Reduced parking requirements. Unless you decide to opt out, they have changed the parking requirements by statute basically it's multifamily housing. So they're reducing the required amount of parking. So in our downtown district, for example, and I didn't put the whole the whole line there, but basically, if you have a efficiency apartment or 1 bedroom, you'd be providing 1 parking space. Our regulations may have said that you have to have 2. So it's those sorts of things. So you're maxed out. So say you have a 3-bedroom apartment downtown. Our regulations would have probably required you to have 3 parking spaces. They're saying now you have to have, you can't go ask for more than 2. So they're not bad regulations. I mean, the trend has been to reduce parking, around not just the state, but around the country. And especially, in a place like Milford, that's very fortunate because we have a robust, public transit system, and where a lot of our multifamily is located, which is in the greater downtown area, we have the train station. So if you go at any time to visit any of the projects this board has approved downtown that have all of the parking that is currently required by our regulations, and even the projects that are outside of downtown, you'll usually find half of it is empty at any given time. So, so again, things to think about. We have to change in our regulations. I'll show you here. 7.3.2. The legislature doesn't want zoning boards anymore to say that, the character, we're gonna approve this or deny this because of its character. The character doesn't seem like it fits. Well, now you have to explain what it is. What are the physical characteristics? What's going on? You just can't say, yeah, the character. This, you don't like the character of this project or that project. Not that this board has done that, but we have language in there that would be in conflict with this
That's
statute.
old news.
And let's see here. And let's see. We have to create something for cottage food industries. And we have basically there is a new not land use. They have a new sort of food permit for people who, and it's actually been around a couple of years, but we now have to do something with it where, say you like to bake cookies and sell them at the farmer's market on the weekend. You can do that. There's a state permit for that, and it's called a cottage food activity. So we should just come up with, we should just recognize it. It's similar to a home occupation, which we have in our regulations. So we should just tweak that to recognize it. There's language that we should take into consideration because we are next to a navigable waterway. We still need to find out how we would take these things, to what degree we can take these things into consideration in evaluating an application. It's not clear. We should make reasonable consideration. I'm not sure what reasonable consideration means. And if we need regulations that spell out what reasonable consideration is for developments that would impact Long Island Sound, beyond the developments that we currently have that are done under CAM. One that I know is close to the chair's heart, which is incentives for energy and conservation. The board could create development incentives for items underlined above. And so you have combined heat and power, water conservation, including demand offsets, energy. There are all sorts of things that are nice green things. And what the legislature is basically saying is, you can create incentives to promote that. So those incentives could take the form of density bonuses or FAR increases, height increases, smaller setbacks, less parking. I mean, really any of our standards could be tweaked as an incentive to get some of these things in a development. Board member education. We're all given a separate memo regarding education and the opportunities that you'll have for further education. This is just the actual legislation. And it basically it has sort of rolling deadlines for depending on when you were on the board. My recommendation would be, we're going to be any educational opportunities that come up, the whole board is going to be given them, when we get them. And you'd be encouraged to take them And even though, in some of, based on when some of you were elected, it may not be, required, for, a few years. Having the knowledge doesn't hurt.
But David, I have a question on that specifically.
Sure.
One of the problems that I see, and I agree that it says you have to have at least 4 hours of training, through the South, as a liaison with the Southeastern Council of Governments.
Yep.
They've been offering training, except that, if you're a working individual, you can't make that training.
Yep.
And how are they going to address that so that people that, we're a volunteer board, and most of us are working individuals, how are we going to get our training, and what happens if we don't get the training?
Yes, well, the statute is silent on what happens if we don't get the training. That's a good point, and I'm sure this will not be the only municipality that's going to raise that issue, we'll have to see. All I can tell you is we'll have to see. A lot of the board training comes from the Yukon, outreach. The Yukon, I forgot the service. That's
Is any of the training remote?
well, hopefully it will be. Hopefully it will be. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll get it. They'll have some that'll be offered in the evening and remotely. So,
Mr. Salkis, if I could, just my response to Chairman Quish's, the materials that have been at least offered were remote, yes, but they're during the day when we work. And that was the problem that I noted.
Yeah.
So it was scheduled remote, not like a floating remote module you can watch and. I got you. Okay.
And a lot of that training may also be recorded, and you may be able to watch it at your leisure. I know with my professional organization, they do that sometimes. So I would anticipate something like that for you as well. Or the Yukon Extension Service, I believe that's what it's called. They would have some of these seminars and then make them available to you. And I'm sure CCM will do the same thing. But most of the training usually comes from the Extension Service and often from the Connecticut Bar Association. So we'll see what we end up with. Something else to consider are temporary healthcare structures. Now, the board deliberately did not opt out of this. When the healthcare structure first became to the forefront, which was several years ago, and the board decided at that point to handle them as special exceptions. And I believe we did that. I believe on West River Street there was a special exception for basically allowing someone to convert their garage to be used sort of as a healthcare situation for the elderly parents of people who live there. So there's been some changes, and if we should probably take this opportunity to update our regulations to just take into account what how the state is defining these things now if we're not opting out, and to establish follow the process that they're saying that we should be following.
And one thing that I think that is germane is that with the change in accessory structure, it almost makes this whole thing moot, because then you can just do an accessory structure and then none of these restrictions would apply.
Right.
So this whole thing becomes moot. If you want to do it, then you do it as an accessory structure. Then you don't even have to abandon the use when it's no longer pertinent.
But for instance, and there are cases in other places where someone they bring in basically a healthcare structure that's a movable trailer, for instance, that's temporary. Yeah. And under this they would be able to do that, and again, it would be temporary, it would be there. It may not meet, we'd have to go through this to see whether or not it has to it's limited in terms of setbacks and things. I think that's where it would be different. you know,
Yeah, I just think there's so much redundancy that it
yeah.
would be a very, very, very rare occasion
Oh,
where
yeah,
you would need to go here instead of just calling it accessory. But
Right.
anyway, well, we can dive into that.
right, right. Another thing that they're allowing are floating zones and overlay districts. We don't have any of those, but you know, if the board felt the need to create something, we could. You know, an overlay zone would be, you know, basically you would designate an area, and based on some certain criteria that would occur in this area, you might be able to do, you know, X, Y, Z based, you know, just on this floating zone that would sort of drop in this area. You know, the larger cities, well, where they were allowed to do it, like New Haven, which is a special act city, they have floating zones. Now with the change in the legislature, you know, basically any municipality can use those. They're often used as a development tool. You know, there's some sort of new sort of development, some sort of new grant land use that no one really anticipated. Oh, well, you can create a floating zone and create, you know, the rules for that new use and, you know, plop it down somewhere. And that's pretty much that in a nutshell. And it's actually 8 o'clock, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we do have another meeting. So if we get the agenda up again, and you know, I thank you. I think you and your staff, unless you did it all, did a great job. But anyway, thank you for a very thorough and informed look at what's new in front of us. May take a little bit of time to read through it and digest it. But I think what we should do as for the subcommittee is probably ask staff to pick a couple things. Unless the board wants to, anybody on the board that feels that there's one issue or two issues that they think should be first and foremost for the subcommittee, the regulation subcommittee to address. And without that, I would just ask for staff recommendations on a couple things for us to address on our next meeting next week. So then I would ask the board if anybody has a particular feeling that one issue is more important than the other, then I'd love to hear it. If not, then we'll just let staff recommend a priority order. Okay, well, thank you for a great report.
You're welcome.
And so then I would hear a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, without objection. And David, if you could give us, you know, maybe like 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
And then we'll open up and give everybody a chance to
Yeah.
whatever, and then come back in about 5 minutes for the POCD.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody, for your time and patience.
take care.